like to call the City of Mount Vernon City Council study session for January 6, 2021 to order. The time is now 6 o'clock. We want to welcome some guests with us tonight because our first agenda item is of great importance. So our first agenda item is swearing in of our new council member, Juan Morales. And so I'd like to introduce Judge Laura Riquelme, who will administer the oath. Judge Riquelme.
Thank you, Mayor. So first of all, I would just like to say that it is my great honor to get to swear Juan in. I have known him for several years, and we work very closely together on a daily basis. So it's just such a privilege to get to be a part of this this evening. So with that, Juan, I'll ask you to raise your right hand, or Mr. Morales, I'll ask you to raise your right hand, and you'll need to unmute yourself. And please repeat after me. I state your name.
I, Juan Morales,
do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution.
Do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution
and laws of the United States.
And laws of the United States.
The Constitution and laws of the State of Washington.
The Constitutions and laws of the State of Washington.
And the ordinances of the City of Mount Vernon.
And the ordinances of the City of Mount Vernon.
And that I will faithfully and impartially perform and discharge the duties.
And that I will faithfully and impartially perform and discharge the duties.
Of the office of City Council Member.
Of the office of City Council Member.
For the City of Mount Vernon.
For the City of Mount Vernon.
In and for the County of Skagit.
In and for the County of Skagit.
State of Washington.
State of Washington.
According to law, to the best of my ability and understanding.
According to law, to the best of my ability and understanding.
Well, congratulations.
Congratulations, Juan. We welcome you. And if you'd like to say a few words, the floor is yours.
Thank you. I do want to take a quick moment just to say thank you to everybody, to my family, my friends, my core group of mentors that I've had along the way, my partner Viviana, the judges over at Superior Court, Judge Riquelme, Judge Needy, and everybody that's impacted my way on a daily basis, and even on the non-daily basis. It's a great honor for everybody to be here to see this, and I'm completely humbled by all of this, and I really look forward to doing a good job, to learning a lot, and helping out everybody and the whole city the best way that I can.
Awesome words, Juan. I'll ask the other council members too, if I'll put them on the spot, if anyone wanted to say anything tonight.
I'll just say, Juan, welcome to the City Council. We're all looking forward to working with you and getting to know you better.
I'll say, Juan, I'm so excited to have you on our council, and I look forward to seeing you in person again. And I'm sure that we will work to do good things for the citizens of Mount Vernon. So congratulations to you.
Thank you, council members.
I'll chime in and say oh, go ahead. No, go ahead, Iris. No, you go ahead first. Okay, I'll go. Juan, it seems like it was just 3 short years ago that Judge Needy swore me in, and I couldn't be, so I don't know what's in the water with Superior Court, but it's working. I just want to say to you, welcome to City Council. I am so excited to get to work with you, and I look forward to what the next several years has to bring. Congratulations.
Juan, welcome. I am really happy to see you, and this is a great opportunity for our community to have you over as new asset, and I am sure you you're going to be able to do a great job because you are really committed with the community. And I am so pleased to see you being another council member in Mount Vernon. Very welcome, and we are here to support you. And anything you need, we are here for you. Thank you.
And Juana, I want to congratulate you. Unless Jill, the mayor, decides to change the seating order, we're going to get to sit right next to each other down at the end. So looking forward to it.
Sounds good with me.
I'll say welcome too, and the easy part's over, hard part's to come. Let's get to work preserving this great community and making it even better.
Great. And before we move on and say goodbye to our guests, thank you for those who logged on to support Juan tonight, or Councilmember Morales tonight. I don't know about the rest of the council, but after watching today's events, it's emotional to watch someone take the oath that we all took, and in a way, you kind of reaffirm the oath to the Constitution and the betterment of our city tonight, along with Juan. And so it's a memorable night, I think, for all of us. So thank you so much. And with that, we'll go ahead and move on to our next agenda item. So I'll ask our guests if they want to go ahead and log off, and we'll get busy working for the city. So thank you. Okay. Next up, so agenda item B tonight is our election of our mayor pro tem, and our city attorney Kevin Rogerson's going to go ahead and introduce the item for us.
Thank you, Mayor and members of City Council, and as the first member of city staff to speak in front of the newly constituted City Council of 2021, I want to extend my congratulations to Councilmember Morales as well. I think everybody was very impressed with your character during this election process. Getting to the topic at hand, Mount Vernon Municipal Code every year requires members of the City Council after each general municipal election and thereafter, whenever a vacancy occurs, to elect from your number a mayor pro tem. The duties of mayor pro tem is set forth in your municipal code and are, in the case of the absence, death, or disability of the mayor, that person would be able to perform the duties of mayor, except that he or she shall not have the power to appoint or remove any officer or to veto any ordinance. The appointment of a council person as mayor pro tem also shall not in any way abridge that person as a council member's right to vote upon all questions coming before the city council. So they would serve both functions at that time. We have had a general municipal election, which has concluded. At this time, it is ripe for city council to elect from your number a mayor pro tem to serve until the conclusion of the next general election, or until that mayor pro tem vacates that position.
Okay, so thank you, Kevin. So as our custom is, this is where there's nominations from the body of council. If there are any nominations for the position of mayor pro tem.
All right, I will chime in. I would like to nominate my fellow council member, Mary Hudson, as the next mayor pro tem.
Second.
All right. And as Mark reminds me, which I really enjoy every year, I do this 3 times. So I'll say, is there any other nominations for the position of mayor pro tem tonight? All right, any other nominations? Seeing none, there is a motion by Melissa and a second by Mark to seat Mary Hudson as the mayor pro tem for 2021. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Are there any opposed tonight? All right, carries. Thank you. Thank you, Mary. Hopefully I won't get super sick.
Yes, please do not get sick or do anything like that. Thank you to my fellow council members. I appreciate your vote of confidence.
All right, so moving on then. So tonight we have a discussion scheduled for fire infrastructure. And so we have Chief Brian Bryce, our fire chief, and Doug Valesky, our finance director, and myself to lead us through a discussion, something we've been talking about for a while, but we want to come back and refresh and look to move forward. So I'm going to turn it over to Chief Bryce. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor, and good evening, council members. I have a short PowerPoint, and Doug will intercede with this here in just a second. Let me share my screen. And make sure that we can see this. Oops, let's start this over from the beginning. In my practice, I moved this through too far. Hopefully everybody could see that. If you can't, please let me know. So dating back to 2018 is when we began this dialogue. But this dialogue really precedes that by several years, going all the way back to 2002 when Fire Station 3 was first brought into the CIP as needing some improvements and enhancements for station configuration and enlargement for staffing the apparatus there and the personnel. With that, then you add in Fire Station 1, which was part of the initial conversation. Tonight's conversation is going to be focused on Fire Stations 2 and 3, but we can surely talk about Station 1 should we desire to, but it's going to be focused on 2 and 3. With that, I'd like to kind of go over just a little bit of some of the accomplishments to date. And while 2008 seems like a while ago, for me, it seems very close in time in that there hasn't really been a slowdown or a stop from at least the staff work on what we've tried to do following some of the council's direction. So back in December of 2018, we brought forward the station needs assessment that was done that looked at all 3 of our fire stations. With that, we had the public safety and council meetings for review and discussion. And just through my review, it looked like there was at a minimum of 7. And I say at a minimum because I know we had some other topics that were brought in at different agenda items as a good of the order where we had future discussions, but those 7 were brought forward specifically on this topic. In April of 2019, we did go to a voter bond, which unfortunately did not pass. We then followed that up with a review and a refresh of the engineering and admin options with that in December of 2019 with the presentation to council. And then following that, we had a follow-up additional work by McKenzie and then a peer review by HKP, the local architect, to kind of look at that work and find anything that they might see that stands out to them with regard to what could be done with value engineering and admin options as well. And that was in March of 2020. So that brings us to date. And to date, what we're looking to do is have a little bit of a review of what were our key goals for our stations. And so going back to the needs assessment, some of the key pieces that stood out for Station 2 were seismic safety, making sure that it was going to withstand an earthquake so that in the time of need, our crews could respond and wouldn't be in danger there. Make sure we meet the standards for decontamination, both for the crew and our protective gear, which is currently being exposed to the elements and exhaust and the workspaces. Additionally, a key factor here is in 2019, we also brought on the ambulance transport, which was the addition of 15 additional personnel from our response side and 2 additional personnel in our admin side. So again, we need to look at our workspace for our crew members, address the safety concerns that were very highlighted most recently with some of the contact with COVID and the close contact, open spaces being right next to each other, trying to keep some of that. So while COVID might go away, there's still communicable diseases, normal flus and colds that we can help protect our crew members from. We want to make sure we right-size that crew area for the kitchen and day rooms. Again, we brought on additional personnel that impacted the spacing there in our stations. And then again, another key piece was ensuring that we meet the ADA requirements, making sure they're met. We have a front counter where the public comes in. We want to make sure that it's accessible to all that want to enter into our building. Again, the key is the health and safety are the key needs and goals for the station improvement. Station 3, they look very similar. Again, I think there we're looking to add the additional spacing for the personnel and potentially an additional ambulance out of that station when the community continues to grow in that area. It is our largest area of residential area that had the most growth recently. So we anticipate seeing continued growth there as well. You still see the same concerns there with our Fire Station 3. With that, we had put together an outline of some cost matrix under our capital infrastructure pieces, utilizing some funding through our GEMT And through that funding, it outlined kind of a way that we could provide for our capital needs, be it the equipment, the ambulances, the engines, the truck companies, along with being able to improve our stations with that. So we put together a simple time frame that outlines what we could do. And right now it says it's starting in about February, should the council decide to take action, with a design and engineering piece of that, the permitting, and then bidding, and then the construction phases. You see it separated there only at the construction phase, where the majority of the work for the design and engineering and permitting can be done for both the stations, and saving us time and money at that point in time. And then we would just phase in the construction, completing Fire Station 3 first, which would allow us to relocate a few of the admin staff up to that station to accommodate the redesign there at Station 2, and have minimal disruption to our operations and deployment of our folks. We've looked at this several times, and while yes, there are some constraints, since in this plan, we wouldn't be moving admin over to Fire Station 1, but we strongly believe with our recent working remotely areas, there's now a way that I think we can accomplish our work. We could also put some pieces into Fire Station 3, get that done, and really relocate those folks on a temporary basis with very minimal impact to either the admin or the operations folks, as I had said. So I think this timeline is very doable with regard to that. So with that, I'll let Doug talk a little bit about the city debt and where we can go with the funding.
All right, thanks, Brian. Good evening, Mayor and council members, and special welcome to Councilmember Morales. Really happy to have you here, and looking forward to working with you. So tonight I'm kind of going to use this opportunity to give my annual debt update, to know where we are citywide as far as our debt is concerned, and then go where it can mean how this can fit in with going through bonds for the Fire Station 2 and 3. So right now, as this one shows, we have a government debt. What government debt is, there's no general funds used to pay these off. We only have $315,000 of it. We have 115 that is for the Riverside Bridge Public Works Trust Fund. That's going to be paid off this year. We're making our last payment, and that will be completed. And that's being paid through our REIT 1 Capital Improvement Fund. And then we also have $200,000 loan from HUD Section 108, and that one matures next year in 2022. And that was a $1 million loan that was taken out for the waterfront project. So there we have, again, for government debt, a total of $315,000.
And council, just so you know, all the slides will be available for you too. Just making sure you know you can refer back to them. Okay, sorry, Doug.
No, that's all right. The next one is our utility debt. And this is where, as you can see here, we have a total of about $15.2 million of debt, and that was out of an original almost $36 million. The top one, our state revolving one for that $8.4 million, that's the one that we're currently in the process of trying to refinance. And then the rest of those there are for our Public Works Trust Fund for sewer funds, and the sewer facility, and for a total of $6.8 million for those. So as you can see, these are varying. The bond for the upper one, that refunding, when we do that, that's going to continue. It'll be ending in 2029. And as you can see, the other ones will be going out in 23, 24, 26, and 28. So for utility debt, there's a total of $15 million there. And then our next slide is our general purpose debt. And this is where, mainly that's going to be funded by general fund. This is based off our assessed value. We currently have $0 in debt in here. It's based off our assessed values of $4 billion. Of that, we can have 1% of it go to our debt limit with vote, and 1.5% of a debt limit without vote. And so that equates to $60,894,000. We currently don't have any debt in here, so we have right now a debt capacity of this of $101 million. Just to sum this all up in the next slide here, again, that just shows we have a total debt right now is $15.2 million for the city. 2% of that is that government debt. We have 98% is the utility debt and nothing in general purpose. So the next slide is just kind of showing if we were, if we were to go out for $10 million in a bond of a non-voted bond or councilmatic bond for Fire Station 2 and 3 of $10 million, we would only be using about 9.85% of our total debt for that. So we would still have remaining $50 million of councilmatic debt plus another $40 million, $40.5 million in voted debt available. So I just wanted to give just a real quick update on where we are as far as the debt. This doesn't take very long each year because we really don't have much except for that utility stuff at this point. So if anybody has any questions at all.
I think one, oh, go ahead, Mark. Mark's going to ask probably what I'm thinking. Go ahead, Mark. Go ahead.
So, Doug, if we were to look, and this may be a little bit premature, but if we were to look at a $10 million debt, what we know where the debt service is going to come from. What kind of term are we looking at, and how much is that debt service?
Sure, we're looking at right now about it'd be a 20-year is a term that we're looking at. The rates right now, you know, based off of where we are and where we think they're going to be, is probably about 2%. And we have two different options we could go to. We can either use the public market like we normally do, or else, and then also looking at what we can do through the state has a financing a certificate of participation, a COP plan that we could use too. So I'm going to look to see where we could get, if we decide to do this, who could give us their best rates and move forward with that.
Okay. And do we know what the annual payment on that debt service would be?
The annual payment would be, we're approximating about $600,000.
So are there bonds that are less time frame, less maturity?
Yes, we can. We can look at different options. I'm just right now I was looking at you know, about a 20-year bond. Usually they're 20, 25. But you know, yeah, we can definitely go and look at bringing that down.
I'll share my concern, Doug. My concern is I think the GEMT money, this is a perfect spot and a perfect project to utilize that money on. It is FEMA money that's coming in. We're going to undergo administration change here in a few days, and probably another one in another 4 to 8 years. My concern is that we go out 20 years on this kind of a debt with that as our mechanism to service the debt. What's our chances of FEMA maybe making a change to the program and that money dries up? So I'm just thinking if we were to do it in a little shorter period of time, would that give more security to the city?
Sure, and I can definitely look at different options there and see what's available and what we can do and bring those forward.
It's just something I think we should look at.
Absolutely. No, agreed.
That's what I was going to have him talk about, Mark. So perfect. One other thing I did think about, just to sort of articulate, and Doug being the finance director is, you know, certainly the expert on this, but right now with the interest rates being so incredibly low, the idea that we could invest in the city now, you know, I don't think there's going to be another time, really, if you think about it, with 2% interest, at least for a while. You know, personally, I'll just be upfront, we had a 4% loan on our home from 6 years ago and ended up refinancing down and taking, you know, 10 years off and all that. So, and it's just that ability to do it because interest rates were so low. And in looking back at our first house, I think our interest rate was like 8%, and I can't imagine, you know, having to pay that now on just a home versus the savings we could realize on infrastructure, you know, for the city. So appreciate Doug taking a look at all the different options. And of course, depending on what council would like to do, bring back all of the details of the options to do. So.
Yeah, absolutely. In those rates, I grabbed a 2%, and that's probably actually the higher end of it at this point where it would be. Right now, estimates that I received from the state are down to 1.48, but then they go back up to like 2.23. So there's obviously, I think these rates are going to be staying down for quite some time. Yeah, I agree, totally agree with the mayor. If we're going to be doing anything like this, now's the time to do it.
And, Doug, I have a question. On the Riverside Bridge loan and the HUD, you said 21 and 22. Is that year ending, or is it coming sooner? Is it like in February of 21, or is it at the end of the 21?
It's towards I think one of them's actually I'm trying to remember which one it is. I think the Riverside one is in December. They're towards the end of the year.
Okay, thank you.
I would double check that though, and I can get back to you on that.
I have a couple questions. Is now a good time? Yep. I just want to make sure, just quickly, that I understand. We're looking at 10 million, and it's going to be around 600,000 a year, and we would use the GEMT funds to service that. Correct?
Yep. That's correct.
Okay.
Correct.
And at this point in time, we know that 10 million. We're pretty confident that that's going to cover everything that we need for the two stations.
So I don't know, someone can jump, but so what we're basing that on is, just the latest information that we have from our consultant. Now, I will say, of course, those are estimates on concept. So if we have the ability from council to go right into our architecture, design, and engineering, that's where we'll end up with bid documents and then really find out, truly. But as the professionals that they are, they're knowing what those costs are as we go along. And this is the time for us to say, we have $10 million. We have two things to do. And that's what, design and architects and engineers work toward. So there's different options on doing that. A traditional, design and all that, and then go bid it is one way. There's ulterior methods where you basically go to your architect, engineer, and builder and say, you got 10 million, get it done. But I think that as we move through that next phase, we know that we have 10 million. And so that would be the ultimate goal for me is, administrating it is, I don't plan to come back to council and say I need 4 more. That's just not what I would ever do. So okay. I think, yeah, the numbers that were given had escalations as well. And I think the number that we're coming up with, the 10 million for it, was if we construct by 2022, Brian, or Chief, if I'm remembering. So I think we've got enough, really educated estimates there. Okay.
Yeah, and just to kind of chime on that just real quick, council member, what the architect is seeing in the market right now is before, if you remember back, we kind of talked about the escalation, and from the original documents we brought forward to that following year when we redid the engineering and all that, because of escalation, it almost equaled out the same amount. But because of the COVID and the pandemic and the economy, what they're seeing now in the market is zero escalation, meaning it's not going any higher. It went up that amount, but it's not continuing to rise. And that's why the timing is really well, much like Doug is saying with regards to the bond, the timing is good in the construction market for this type of operation.
Okay. And the only other thing I wanted to say is I do agree with Mark. If we could look at shortening the time a little bit, I'd be interested in seeing what that looks like.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So, Chief, I think you had one more. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, I was just waiting to see if there was more
I've got
bond
some
questions
as well. I'd like to jump in.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah. So back to the Gantt chart, if you would, the timeline.
Bear with me here 1 second.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, so I'm curious about Station 2 and 3 and the co-designing and the bond timing. You know, if we're not going to utilize the majority of the funds until, uh, for Station 2, that is until it looks like August of 2022. Do we want to go to a bond right away for all of it and sit on that money? I know we need to have certainty, so it's sort of how do you balance that?
So part of the answer for me is in the design and engineering, there is a cost associated with that, that those funds would need to be made available to do that work. And then by the time we get into design or construction, I'm sorry. So in this Gantt chart, what we've programmed in is what we believe to be the long end of the process, meaning we have 2 months in there for the permitting, we have 2 months in there for the bidding process of that, and then also those other 6 months in there for 6 to 7 months on the design. We've done a considerable amount of work with some of the design previously on the needs assessment. So we believe we'll probably be able to shorten some of that. So the timing that we go to the bond, from my perspective, I leave that back more to the finance folks and when that needs to be done. I just know that, when we start to engage in architects and we engage in engineering and all the other pieces, we just need to be able to have the funding available and ready. And from my understanding too, is when we go to the bidding process, the contractors are going to want to see that there's a secure source for that funding as well.
So Richard, I had a conversation with the mayor a couple days ago. I think it was on Tuesday. We had coffee. We social distance though, trust me. My understanding is that we've kind of talked about this whole strategy in the past, is possibly being able to break some kind of ground in Station 3 at the latter part of this year, rather than going into 2022. Actually, maybe be able to break some ground in 2021. I think that with the rates, the interest rates the way they are right now, we should take advantage of that. I think if we go ahead and move forward or we come to an agreement with this and decide to move forward, we should go ahead and get that funding in place, probably within the first quarter of this year, and that gives them the ability to do all that design and everything that they need to do. And when it's ready to break some ground, the money's there to do it.
I think too, from speaking to what Chief said, and Doug, you have to remind me, because I think you said that before we go to bid, we have to have the funds in place. Isn't that correct? I can't remember exactly. Maybe I was thinking of something different, but.
We had talked about, I can't remember, I believe it is the one with the state, and I believe I was going to check and I didn't.
I think it was the state option.
Yeah, that we would have to have a contract in place before, to prove how much we're going to need and stuff for that. But that's something I'm going to have to verify.
So what I think the point of talking about this tonight was to kind of like refresh. Okay, here's our opportunities. Thinking that to kind of get the feel of the council, if you'd like to have us move forward on this idea, what we'd like to do then is bring back, more information on bonds. So, a 10-year bond and a 20-year bond, and show some of that detail. We didn't want to do too much of that work without thinking council wanted to do something like this. And then we would, kind of re-talk about the design and engineering with our consultant and kind of maybe nail down a little more detail on that. There's a lot of moving parts still, so maybe there's economies of scale in building at the same time. But then we have to think about, what do we do with staff while we're building? So so those are all these sort of things that would kind of play out if we just get the ball rolling, and launch into a design and engineering phase, is what they would say.
Well, I believe that we're all in agreement that we need to start moving forward on this. I don't think any one of us believes that we really have time to wait any longer. We've been talking about it for quite a while, and I think we're in a position now where we can move forward. I'd really like more information on the bond rates and all that.
Okay.
before obviously nailing down anything, but I do believe, I think that we're all in agreement that we need to move forward.
So we've, as Mary said, we've been talking about this for a while. We now have a funding source and a way to pay for the needs at stations 2 and 3. And I absolutely think we need to move forward with this and get this done. We've got the health and safety of our employees at stake here, and there's a number of other issues involved, and we just have to move forward.
So, how about the design funding? Is the intent to borrow that as well, or are we have another way to begin to continue the work on design?
So, yeah, if for some reason we have some design invoices that come in, we do have some money in that fund already right now. And if need be, we can easily do just a general fund loan, interfund loan, for a few months until that bond came in. So I'm not too concerned about that. I think the city has the funding to provide for that as long as it's reimbursed by the bond, and so we can move forward with that.
I do think it would be good to get the design moving while we think about the costs more, since they were conceptual level. And to lean into another question I had is Station 2 and the design around that. There's still quite a bit of discussion to be had about the location of the Emergency Operations Center and the size and scale and admin and pieces along those lines. So I do think there's some questions about design, which of course affect cost. So as we proceed on those things, more certainty will help us.
Yeah, I think in the 20, oh gosh, sorry, now I'm going to get the January 29, 2020, this one, the refresh, they did go ahead and kind of, draw conceptually in having the administrative needs as defined by the needs assessment back into Station 2. I think the only thing that I remember being somewhat of a concern is the stormwater needs that would potentially happen in there. And so that's more than likely one of the first things we'll ask the architects to do is exactly how far can we go without triggering $700,000 for the stormwater, because there's a certain way to expand that is okay, but they're just not sure about going over and what we could do with that. So, that would be probably the first thing that we would want to answer. But and Chief, correct me if I'm wrong, I do believe that the admin space is already addressed per the needs assessment back into Station 2 from that revisional work. Is that right?
Correct. There was a revised task to look at that as if Station 2's admin stayed there with regard to that. And you're right, it was the stormwater requirements that would be there and then just triggering on any other parking requirements and so forth. All of those are, I will say, easily solvable. And when we talk about the design for the station and the EOC and all that, those are all things I feel very comfortable that if we move forward with the $10 million bond, and I know that that's the amount, that's the ceiling piece of that we could actually absolutely work with the architect and the design team to make this work. I don't have a concern for the context of will we be able to get the needs for the crews and the safety there with what we're looking at. And then when we talk about an EOC, remember, we're talking about Stations 2 and 3 here. We also have a Fire Station 1 that could be a later discussion where that could be incorporated, especially if we're not going to be removing admin. That changes that whole entire design. So that's a separate dialogue. Absolutely want to have that dialogue. But right now, I think if we stay focused more on the 2 and 3, it opens up that opportunity to be there and is going to address the needs that have been for the city since, again, going back to 2002 when it was first put into the CIP as a need for Fire Station 3. And as we've talked about over the last almost 3 years now, a way to accomplish all that, utilizing a funding mechanism to pay the debt and get us to a good place.
if you're wondering about one, because I think that I'm going to guess Richard's going to ask about that next.
That's next.
What we thought we would do, because there is only so much capacity, with our staff, with our regular operational responsibilities every day, and then taking on capital projects. And so, really want to see us get some great traction. Let's get far into that design and engineering, because I think a lot of the questions that we have on what Fire One could now be, because it's kind of going back to that discussion, might surprise us. There might be things we didn't think of, or things are solved now. And so what we would want to do is maybe consider halfway through next year, that gives us till maybe June, or not next year, sorry, it's still in December, halfway through this year, coming back in maybe late June or 1st of July and going, okay, here's where we're at with 2 and 3. Maybe we're ahead of schedule. Woo! And then kind of re-engage with, okay, now how do we want to talk through Fire Station 1? Because in the meantime, in sandwich between those two is the discussion of the Commons project, which if we kind of think sequentially, we would need to have some answers on what that may not be going ahead, all that, before we start impacting the library parking lot. So in a way, if we make this decision maybe by the end of the month and that gets rolling, awesome. We are like on our way. We come back, we talk through the Commons and how the Fire Station 1 decision impacts both of those projects. I think we really need to have some really good thought process on impacts of those two projects before we make decisions, maybe on either one. So that's kind of how staff and I have been thinking about Fire Station 1.
I really appreciate that, and sort of learning as we go and how that affects Station 1, because that's the bigger ticket item. But I think none of us want to create some unintended consequences or impacts to Station 1, because we've been told repeatedly that that's the bigger need for the city. So usually try to do the hardest things first, but in this case I think we're all on the same page that we can tackle these two, maybe even ask the legislature for some help as we get ahead moving here with some of the energy efficiency pieces of the station. And so that might be another opportunity I'm really excited about. I just don't want to miss anything that would hold us up on Station 1. What is the capacity? And you've answered the question of bond authority. We have enough capacity, whether it's voted or non-voted, to move ahead on those. So that's good. But there's also a co-designing aspect of this. So you're thinking of all those, and I'm glad to start cluing in a little bit more.
I think momentum is also a really big deal. And so when our public, when we start talking about one, like in our general public discussion, council's going to be able to say, we found a revenue source that wasn't available when we first talked about, the bond. We have taken care of, look at our stations, we have taken care of our responsibility here and seeking that partnership. And I think that's a really good, valid, strong message for council to be able to talk about. So
yeah, so again, that was just a slide I had put together as well regarding Station 1, but I think the mayor covered that information there about those bullet points there, that it's absolutely still a priority. It's absolutely not being forgotten, considering all of those things. But until we actually start sitting down and what I call the actual design and engineering, those are the things that will make us have a better perspective of what will be going into Station 1 afterwards. But I think movement on 2 and 3 really helps solidify those things. Let me move through Doug's slides here again. Doug's got the slowest transitions, I think, possible. So between the mayor and the staff recommendation, what we'd like to do is move forward on Stations 2 and 3, utilizing the financing from GMT committed to the debt services, and then obviously continue the discussion on Fire Station 1, again, for those other bullets that we had brought up before. Making sure the timing is right, making sure we've got good movement, and we have those sequences planned out the right way. That kind of wraps up my slides that I have. I know we've had some discussion, some questions. Is there additional questions I could answer for council?
Okay.
I have just a request. We have in the past benefited from the chief's capital plan. And so now this is sort of, a slight update. And of course, some time has water's passed under the bridge since then. So I'm hoping we'll see a updated capital plan that has now this estimated debt service and other pieces from the CIP. And we can kind of see how this all plays out over 10, 20 years associated with those terms that you're going to also provide us next time.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's an easy fix. And I put one in that I have as a draft right now. If going back to the original plan, when we talked about stations 2 and 3 in that 10-year plan, there was a lump sum kind of payment for those 2 stations that I had factored into that. So the difference that I'll have to do is just create what the bond payment would be, plug that in, so we see what that looks like year after year and a reoccurring. The biggest impact will just be where at the bottom line before on that capital plan, you saw kind of like a slightly larger number in what I'll call that savings in that ER and R, because the monies would all go out in a bigger lump sum. But if you stretch that out in a bond payment, you would just see kind of a reoccurring steady number down there at the bottom, because that same amount would be coming out every year for that piece of it. With the exception of the years where we have bigger expenses, i.e. the engines or truck companies that we need to purchase in that plan.
I think what we could do for the next steps is, because I really like momentum, I would like to put it on the agenda again for next week and be able to answer the questions around, some more details around the bond and the terms and the dollar amounts. Chief will update that, kind of large financial spreadsheet sheet, just like he explained, so that you can see it kind of in black and white, like how things can play out. And then maybe we'll have some information from our architecture and design firm and just a little bit more detail as we kind of flesh this out. I don't think there's necessarily any council actions maybe yet. Those actions I could foresee to be, and Doug and Chief will help me if I'm wrong, it would be kind of authorization to move forward on preparing a bond. That takes around 3 months or even more than that. So that it definitely needs to get in progress, but that would take a council decision for that. And then you'd come back again when the issuance occurs. Is that correct, Doug? Okay. And then as far as design and engineering, that would be contract amount and dollar amount to award, and that would be another council action that we would have to prepare for as well as we move into that. So those are the kind of the things to anticipate if we decide that we'd like to continue the discussion weekly until we get that actually moving. Does that sound okay to council if we do that? Okay. So we're gonna, we'll talk about this next week and continue the conversation. Any other questions? Oh, go ahead, Richard.
Yeah, just one more, maybe with the learning from the collective wisdom here about timelines in Station 1. And I appreciate sort of, okay, we're gonna focus on 2 and 3, gonna learn some things, and then kind of reconsider Station 1. I think one of the things we've talked about in the past is Station 1 is likely needs to go to the community again through a ballot measure. And we had started thinking about, a November timeframe, maybe even later this year, but all that was sort of pre-decisional. I'm just curious, is there a way to stay on that timeframe, or is it just too early to know, or this clearly pushes us back further than that? And so maybe it's not answerable, but maybe somebody's thought about this already, or we can talk about it over the next few months.
Well, I think the mayor had said earlier in the conversation this evening that we want to get this part of the project going, and then take a look in about June to see where we're at with this project, how that's moving forward, and then reconvene on Station 1 if the timing's right. So I think that's discussion will happen. It'll happen this year, whether it be June or July, but I think that discussion will happen. We just need to get moving on something we can accomplish today, or start the process of accomplishing today. We need to get that moving, and then when that's well in the works, then we can get back to the big need.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. I think the concern it triggered for me is if we're not talking about that until June or July, then we're not going to have the design work in place, to know enough about how much it's going to cost, what the design needs are, what the costs are, and be able to get in line, for a ballot measure. And so just want to keep that maybe in the back burner on our minds as we move forward. That we may need to start a little bit earlier if we do want to hit something at the end of the year.
Yeah, I think in all kind of honesty, on realistic timeframes, because this is something that I wish things happened way quicker.
Right.
So when we're looking at 6 to 7 months of just design and engineering for 2 and 3, knowing those are remodels, right? I mean, they're big remodels, but they're remodels. I think our architects would probably tell us we're looking at, I don't know, Chief, maybe 10 months on design and engineering for Station 1. And so I don't think there's really any realistic chance that we would, well, it's up to council, but I think to invest in design and engineering, so you're literally going as far as you can to get that exact amount before you go to the voters is an avenue I think I'm going to assume that council would like to do. And so let me give you an example of that. Let's say we come to July and we're like, yeah, let's keep going. It's been fantastic. The council could look at doing the design and engineering contract sometime this year. That's probably $1.2 million commitment. So design fees are in RCW, so we know it's like a 6%, right, of the total cost. So maybe we launch into design and engineering before the end of this year, knowing that now that sets us up for the idea of a vote sometime in 2022. But if you'd like, we can come back and do that. I think what I've learned in trying to get projects moving forward is doing too many things gets really confusing. Before, when we were looking at all 3 stations and the commons and all that, I take responsibility for kind of failing to move those things forward because it just was so much stuff, and so much stuff for staff too. So I think coming back mid-year and talking through that would be, I think, the best successful conversation. I don't know, does anyone kind of see what I'm saying?
I think that once the design and engineering is done at stations 2 and 3, we'll have a better idea what our capacity is at those 2 locations. Mm-hmm. We may find out that we're planning to keep admin at Station 2, but we don't know for sure that our stormwater has the capacity to do that. Are we going to spend $750,000 for a vault, or are we going to look at doing something else with admin? So I think we have to get that design and engineering in, so we know what our actual costs are going to be, and then we can make some decisions from there. I'm not going to get into the day-to-day to operations. That's what we hire a police chief or a fire chief for. That's his job. Our job is to find the funding sources and be able to help complete these projects. So we're going to rely on the chief and the mayor as far as day-to-day operations and what has to be done. But we do have to look at what the overall costs are going to be. So until we get design and engineering done on 2 and 3, we won't know what to expect for total costs.
I can fully appreciate wanting to do it all, though. I will say that. So I just want to make sure everyone's comfortable with kind of the coming back next week and kind of a weekly thing until we can make sure everything's wrapped up, comfortable, and then we just hit the go button.
Sounds good.
Okay. Yep. And then call if you have any questions, and we'll just put it on and we'll talk next week. Okay. I'm super excited. I don't know about you guys, but okay. So item D tonight, thank you all for the discussion and for Chief and Doug for doing that work to bring forth the good information. Couple things for the good of the order. And since Chief Bryce is here, he can chime in too. Fire personnel have begun to be vaccinated. So Chief, do you want to just brief council a little bit on that?
Yeah, so we had dialogue. As you know, the vaccine was approved in early December, and then right around the Christmas time, County Health was advised that they were going to receive the shipment. So we worked with them to arrange, as a fire transport personnel fell into that 1A category. So on December 29th, we administered our first round of vaccinations. They come in 10 doses of 10 vials for 10 doses. So we were able to do 20 in each day. We didn't want to overwhelm staff specifically in case there were any adverse effects, meaning if they had even just the mild side effects, we didn't want to have the workforce all out suffering from that. But proud to report that we vaccinated 43 folks in total, 3 of those being from the PD as well. And we had one individual who had a mild fever that went away within 24 hours. So no adverse side effects. Everybody's slated now to receive their second dose, January 26th and 27th. The county is now going to be operating that out of the testing site for the 1A group there over the next 2 days on the 7th and 8th. They will be doing the other first responders in the county, and then they will be transitioning into the Group 1B starting, I think, later the month of January. So they should have their processes worked out from that. It's unfortunate, though, that the state as a whole, specifically our county, isn't receiving as many doses as we need. But the county health is working very diligently to try and get as much as they can so that they can get the folks vaccinated. Just chiming in a little bit too, as the mayor knows, the cases are still up. Death rates, as an example, we sat at 20 to 21 deaths in the county for several months. We had 13 deaths in the month of December alone from COVID related. So it's still there. It's still very prevalent. So this is just my pitch. Please remain diligent, wear your masks, keep your social distancing, because even though some folks are getting vaccinated, it doesn't make people immune. It only helps decrease the side effects. And we need to get the mass population vaccinated before we'll have a real turn on this disease.
I was going to just share a screen really quickly. So sat in on a briefing with public health this morning, and some information came out at noon today from the governor's office, which I didn't watch that myself, but maybe you might have. So what I was going to show you is what we've got on our city website right now under mountvernon.gov and the COVID page. And so we're linking here, as you can see, right into the Governor Inslee's Healthy Washington Roadmap Recovery. And then we're always referring folks to Skagit County Public Health. They are the experts, not us. But we want folks, if they're looking for information, they know that. If you click onto the infographic, and let me know if this pops up and you can see this. Can everyone see that? It's purple? Okay. It's on our website. It's on several places, but if people are interested, they can go on and see where they may fit in the phases. You can also go on to this website, findyourphasewa.org. I did this myself today, and it asks a few questions that are really only related to the first phase right now, the A1 and A2, but it gives you a chance to put in your phone number or email to get more back on when you may possibly be in your phase. And so the robust version, they say, will be really rolled out on January 18, but I thought it was useful today. And so looking at this, I might have to wait till May or June, which is fine, but it just gives people an idea of where they may be in that phasing process for vaccination. And then on the website, it again clicks into Skagit County Public Health where folks can talk through questions with them about vaccination or even testing and anything, of course, COVID related. And I am told that they're hoping to kick off vaccinations at the fairgrounds the week of January 18 as well. And that could, of course, depend on shipments of the vaccines and things like that. So they're doing a great job on leaning forward and being ready when they actually get the shipments. So again, I'm not county public health, but if you have any questions, I'm here to try and answer at least just things that I've heard and just share good information or point you where to go. So any questions about that? Okay. And then just one other thing I had next week, now that council has chosen a mayor pro tem, I'm hoping to be able to just start really scheduling some of the topics that council has made requests for. So for instance, next week, Blaine Chesterfield is going to just run through a quick discussion on the energy efficiency plan and what council's really interested in seeing in that. And because we've kind of shared little bits and pieces of things as we've gone along. So we want to just clarify what council would want to see on that. So we'll cover that. And then on January 20, we'd like to talk over the fiber optic system overview with Kim Kleppe, our IS director, and make sure that council has information or has questions and things you might else want to see beyond that. So far, we're just trying to plug in those topics for at least in the month of January. So, and that's what I have for the good of the order. Anyone else have any questions? Okay. With that, we have completed our agenda items. So I will ask Kevin if there's a need for an executive session tonight.
Yes, there is, Mayor. I invite the City Council to now meet in an executive session for a period of 15 minutes to discuss the selection of a site or the acquisition of real estate by lease or purchase when public knowledge regarding such consideration would cause a likelihood of increased price, and moreover, discuss with legal counsel litigation, enforcement action, or potential litigation to which the city, the governing body, or a member acting in an official capacity is or is likely to become a party. When public knowledge regarding such discussion is likely to result in either adverse legal or adverse financial consequence to the city council is not expected to take final action following the executive session.
All right. Well, with that, then we'll be adjourned into executive session at 7:02. I'll ask council to just hang tight and TV10 will do their thing, and then we'll proceed with that discussion.